Now we heard 5 different speakers and their presentations. We also hope that they inspired you or maybe even raised some questions. So now I would like to invite everyone for a roundtable discussion. So a roundtable discussion is also a great chance for the audience to ask questions. As I mentioned before, we have this app Slido. It might pop up on a screen. Yes. So if you have any questions for any of the speakers, you can just scan this QR code and put your question down on your smartphone. You can also like some of the questions if you want the questions to go on the top, basically on the top of the list of the questions. So it's pretty easy to use. So now I would like to invite all 5 speakers. So that's Dr. Mell, Yves Zimmermann, Bernard Scharf, Džiugas Lukoševičius, and Riikka Nousiainen to come together for a roundtable discussion. I'm also pleased to tell you that the discussion will be moderated by Dr. Inga Urbonaitė-Vadoklienė, who is a Lithuanian architect, initiator and manager of various social and cultural projects. In her scientific and creative activities, Inga examines the change of urban territories based on the principles of sustainable development and the coordination of the needs of different interest groups. Inga, welcome to the stage.
Hello, everyone. We have a lot of questions. Thank you for your really nice presentations. And I don't know how we manage with time because we are a bit lagging behind. It's usual, it's common. But I think we can allow ourselves to jump into lunch break a little bit, yes, because there are so many things that I want to ask, and there are even more things that the audience wants to ask. Maybe I will jump straight into the first question, and it's repeating. That's the thing that I wanted to ask, and the majority wants to ask and talk about greenwashing. How to avoid it? We see the policies, we see nice green plans, and it's we color a lot of areas with green. So is it enough? And how we control the quality of these needs and what's about the implementation? Yeah, we talk about that there is a lack of quantitative data that needs to be controlled, but also quality of art from aesthetical aspects and architectural point of view. We still want to live in a nice environment, but not to be decorative or imitative. So maybe we can start with you, and please, yeah, this I can pass also my microphone later.
I think it's a really important question, and it's one that we're seeing more and more with certain countries in the world using environment as something to promote them as being positive members of the world, mentioning no names, but there are certain places. And I think the ideas are there, it's just, I said, the application. So talking about Malmo, you've got 20 years of practice of putting it in the ground. So you could say it's greenwashing, but actually you've got the evidence there. Again, you're working in Finland, you're putting it in the ground. I think that's where the notion of greenwashing can be sort of tempered a little bit, because people can see the action. Other states, maybe China, maybe the US, maybe even the UK, we have these great renderings, great pictures, but it's never going to happen. So the places in Manchester where I see the pictures and go, that looks really cool, but you then get the developers going, well, we can't afford that. and we can't afford that, and we can't afford that. But you've given us planning permission, so we'll just do what we want. So I think it's really difficult, but we were speaking yesterday about the role of local level planners and advocates pushing for better things and trying to address that greenwashing issue. And so I think in many places that do things well, you've got people holding government or developers to account and saying that's not good enough. And giving the lowest common denominator isn't going to work. So I think that there's really good examples of it working effectively and avoiding greenwashing. But there are still places and states which will do it because they want to be the best or look the best. And I think that's never going away. Just that we all, as an industry, have to go, no, or prove it, and then they never do.
Bernard, how your, for example, solutions and innovation can help not to play around with numbers or
Yes.
really bring...
We were thinking about greenwashing a lot, and we made it clear that you can't greenwash with Green Pass because it's a scientific-based, simulation-based solution. And what you fill in, you get the results. And you see the impact in numbers, and you can cheat on that. It's physical principles and processes that are running on the computer. And what we also do is we also see the competitions, and every entry is a jungle, and there's always a woman, a child, and a dog on the visualization, at least in our context. And what we do basically is we follow the whole process, and the certification is based on the tendering papers. So if they don't ask for a tree in that quality, it will not be in the digital twin. So we check what they really have in their tendering documents, and we check that. And after the finalization, within 2 years after finalization of a project, we check the site. So, and if it does not match what they gave us, what they promised, we will retake our certificate. And this is what we communicate from the first moment on, if we collaborate with large companies. And they all totally agreed. I showed the bill a supermarket, and we did 13 stores this year for them. And 2 of them, we could not give a certificate. But they were fine with that. They understood, okay, the performance is bad. We can't do a lot about it, but we simply know that we should have it on our mind. And if there's a new renovation, something going on. So there is no greenwashing with that system. We're not touching the quality of design, by the way. Quality of design is up to the designers. We're judging the impact of the green and the urban structure.
So I wanted particular about Vienna to ask this question, because we see the architectural outcome. So in the process where they changing the design according to the data that you were providing, and it's not good enough. And then finally they got this kind of architectural expression that's quite intensive, let's say, and could be better, in my personal opinion. So architectural quality versus this data. So what's more important at this case?
We're not judging the architectural quality. It's social housing. It's very compact. It's very cheap to live in there. It's €7.60 per square meters if you rent a flat there, including the heating. And this is in the most livable city on the planet, so that's really cheap. And this, you can't do it with fancy facades and stuff like this, that you know. What's happening now is that if we support urban developments, we check the master plan, and then in some projects we define the performance that the designs in the end have to fulfill. This is a problem for architects and all the teams that hand in, because they provide a jungle in the competition and they promise something, and now we can show them what the performance was that they promised, and they need to stick to that. And then they change the urban design. For instance, quite often we change the openings of perimeter blocks, we change the plant spaces, the tree spaces, and so on, and add here something, move a building somewhere. So it's really a complex situation that you can cope with. And you can keep the quality up with numbers, simulations, so they cannot cheat.
Just having in the process. So collaboration is very, very important, and I want to pass the question to Džiugas and also ask how you control the quality. And there was also a question of who's responsible for creating those public spaces? Is it like a municipality? Do you invest as a city, or somehow you convince private investment to create those spaces? So about the control and co-sharing.
So short reflection about the greenwash. I think that it's in my perspective, it is very important to do this evaluation and don't get carried away by this like nice labels like green roof, like yoo-hoo, it will solve everything. Green roofs, they're good for something, but they're not the solution for everything. So you need to rethink and reevaluate everything. So I think that's this, to avoid greenwash. You need to think constantly. You cannot like just take things as granted, even if they are good things, so to say. And about the public spaces, so of course, like municipalities responsible for creating public spaces, but usually, like finance-wise, it's coming like shared responsibility. If developers are developing the area around so to say, so there has to be some public spaces, and they have to contribute so we have contracts with private developers that help to finance the public spaces, but the design and the like quality of it, it's municipalities' responsibility. Yeah. And what was the other question? Yeah.
So I think you covered. Maybe we'll come back to that later. And continuing on this greenwash wave, and in your experience, you talked a lot about Strasbourg, this whole journey, and you probably saw a lot of compromises that has been done, probably, or maybe not, and failures. We are probably interested in what you failed maybe, and what could be done better in the terms of this imitation of green infrastructure or greenwashing.
Yeah, I think the question of greenwashing goes more to politicians than to experts. This is probably the biggest question, because some of politicians claim to be carbon neutral in 2015, even if they don't know how to achieve this goal. So this is probably, and I think also to some other private investors, such as flying companies, which are claiming to be carbon neutral in 2015. It's not possible. Okay, so greenwashing is a fear from people. It's true sometimes. Yes, some politicians are. In a way, I have a political background. This is why I'm talking about this. I just want to say that even though they want to greenwash something, citizens are not stupid, are following things. And for politicians, there are elections. They can send them back to home to their other duties. But what the citizens expect is monitoring. They want to know clearly where we stand, where we are going, and how we are going there. And this is a transparency which is more expected by citizens, and we cannot anymore tell stories, tell some fancy tales. So I would say evaluating, monitoring, be clear, be transparent with the citizens. It's a need really.
And you want to add something?
Yeah, like a short comment as well. I think thinking of this, exactly, evaluating, you have to take into account that our awareness changes as well. And what aspects do we take into consideration when we evaluate and when we measure? So it's not only our awareness changes, but also climate changes. Problems that are not there, like in Malmö, we used to say like there's this 100-year rain, which used to come like 100-year on average, so to say. It's a huge rain when everything floods, and then like if it comes 100, like once in a 100 years, so yeah, it should happen, but like we can live with that. But now it comes like more and more often, and now we have to deal with it. And then the aspects we have to take into consideration. So I think it is very important, like to say, okay, we have some tools, like how they work. Do they do the job that they were assigned to? And then if we have some new job to do, so to say, that was not there like a few years ago. So I think that is very important to avoid the greenwash, so to say.
And Riikka, also following, you probably mostly work with the question how. Yeah, so politicians promise a lot, and then you get a brief, and you have to do something to deliver. And so, what are the biggest challenges for you as a practitioner when you really your hands on the ground and you try to achieve real results?
Well, Is this open? Yes. So yeah, I usually use like really detailed planning. So that greenwashing is mainly done before it comes to me. But I can think if this concrete stone is it. How much carbon is used to make this? Is this better than some other one? Yeah, but those challenges, like what I face. So I think everything new is something that everybody afraid of. So, for example, like those rain garden I showed, it's not so typical in Finland yet. So some of the developers or construction engineers or something like that, they fear of those. So I think the most thing that people fear is always like new.
Mm-hmm. And what about the maintenance? It's another. You see a lot of nice public spaces that are brand new, nice vegetation, etc. But the maintenance, it costs. And is it also a question that should be raised occasionally and rethinking our decisions, that we definitely want this kind of public space, this kind of plans, but it's not suited to that specific site, and it costs too much to maintain this green solution. So do you see that in your, for example,
yes, sometimes I face that, but I think usually if you are done, nature-based solutions, they are maybe not so expensive to maintain afterwards. Okay. But that's also like a new thing that maybe people don't realize that.
We have to change the mentality. Yeah. Okay, I want to jump to another question. Oh, okay, sorry.
We have that a lot about maintenance, and I like the term green infrastructure. People need to learn that this is an infrastructure. We like to breathe. Did you ever think about where the oxygen is coming from? This is infrastructure that we need for life. And we are paying for the grey infrastructure a lot, for every street, for every public transport, for gas, for electricity, for everything. We're totally used to it. I give you an example. We have discussions at a project, and we're suggesting to have a green facade to optimize energy balance and so on and so forth. And they say, oh, well, yes, we could do that, but the maintenance is so expensive. And then I ask, okay, you have the glass facade next to it. What about the maintenance cost there? Well, yeah, we need to clean it 3 or 4 times a year, of course. They said, okay, that's more expensive than the maintenance for the green facade. Oh, really? So it's not in our mind. We really, like you said, change the mindset. We need to understand that these plants deliver ecosystem services that we need to survive in the city and around the city, of course. Mm-hmm. And this costs money, yes. But the train costs money too, and the street, and everything, and the glass facade.
Money, okay, good.
And I think in addition to that, in the UK, there's a very high reluctance to risk doing something new, because the money's not always there. And rather than doing that and saying, well, actually, this is better than that and it's cheaper, like, if this goes wrong, politically, we will lose our jobs. And so many people are like, well, if we don't do it, it's not good, but we can't be criticised for doing it badly. So there's a lot of local government in the UK who would rather do nothing, and then it's too hot, it's too wet, it floods, than be seen to do something badly and lose the next election. And it paralyses government because people would rather be in government than do the right thing. And a lot of it's about capital investment super, we can put things in, but we can't pay for it. So all the new funding models, which are looking at developers, schools, universities, other civic institutions to take some of that burden, are things which are being discussed. But again, they're reluctant to ask for money because it feels like begging. And they don't want to be seen to be poor. They want to be in control and in power. And if they ask other people to be involved, they lose that authority. So it's sort of a vicious circle of doing nothing, making it worse, and not wanting to fix it because you don't want to be seen to be poor.
You wanted to add some? Okay.
Yeah, is it on? 1-1. Thanks. In addition to that, I would say that from municipality perspective, it's of course like if you're living in countryside, you don't need a park. So yeah. So the more compact you live, the more dense the fabric is. The cost of maintenance is higher, you could say, per square meter. It's much higher, like maintenance for a small park than for a big park. Because there are many more people that use this park, but the end result, if you look at it as an infrastructure that you have to have in the city, so in big scale, of course, it's cheaper, it's more efficient way to do that, and yeah.
Yes, and talking about money and the future and all those big, really important questions that we have to face and find solutions. I want to mention this Green Deal, yes, that was signed by European Commission in 2019, and the financial program in the document tells us of at least 1 trillion of sustainable investments put for these solutions. But the problem is that there is no word landscape there. It's never mentioned in the Green Deal. And my question is, what do you think is the absence of this term in the text is a problem and codes the problem? And I want to lead the question to the profession of and the role of landscape architect or the team. So the future team, the future responsible ones who must do the job. So what's the role of landscape architects and new qualities that landscape architect must have? So maybe you want to add, and we'll make a quick round. I want to hear everyone about this.
Yeah, I think like it is getting very, very complex. So to say, you have to be like really. Know all the environmental aspects, all the recreational aspects. If you think of this ecosystem services, so it covers many aspects, and this livability or the how nice it is, how pleasant it is to be in the space has not to be forgotten as well. I think. The role of the landscape architect is super complex, and it's getting more and more complex every day.
Maybe Bernard, you can continue with the. I really liked your term. Was it urban climate architect?
Yes.
So what's the part of landscape architect there?
No, it's both. Our partners are designers, planners, architects, landscape architects alike. Also, green building auditors are partners at Green Pass. And to come back to the question, I think landscape architects or architects, urban designers, they need to facilitate the transformation from grey to green. And it's really complex. It is, honestly. We try to support them with the information that we can provide in the planning process, which covers one aspect or some aspects at least. But of course, not all aspects that you need to bear in mind if you transform the urban landscape into a livable place for people. So it's a challenging path. And I'm also a lecturer at the university, and we need to build up the knowledge first. So the knowledge is not, in my experience, it's not always in the offices. So there's a lot of new things coming up.
Maybe you can add.
And just to pick up on that past point, I think education and universities have a key role here. So I'm a planner, I'm not a landscape architect, but I teach real estate students, urban design students, geographers, governance students, planners. And so I've got to try and make this stuff applicable to all those different disciplines. And it's really hard, especially to keep real estate students interested without a big money sign flashing up all the time. But what we're seeing is, because we're training people to go out and do the job, they're aware of all these things. They might not know it fluently, but they know the language, they know who to ask for help. And so we're training people to actually, be able to ask questions and say, I don't know, but I know somebody who does. And therefore, as a planner, you need the ecologist to come in to look at that. You need the architect to think about that, and the engineers to think about that. Mm-hmm. So it's not siloed anymore. It's not a single person. It's actually that whole range of people. And I think there's a recognition that landscape architecture, and landscape in particular, is a central part of that, particularly when we're talking about climate or biodiversity. And I think that's coming through with the younger generation. And maybe it's the older people like myself or others who are trained in one discipline who maybe find it more difficult to cross those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Riikka, I think you have to say what to say about the future of landscape architects profession, and what new qualities do you see that you will need in the future, or new partners that you have to collaborate to meet the goals that you...
Yeah, like you said, I think it's more like teamwork in the future, that landscape architects can't do it by themselves. So we really need a big group to tackle these problems.
IT, is it necessary to have an IT person in the team right now, like monitoring all the data and getting really this digital, very visible data, and knowing what to do with it and how to play around with it?
Well, yeah. Well, I see that we really need something to show, that not just abstract ideas, but just like some numbers. So then people maybe understand better.
Yes, please.
I just want to come back to your first question about the European Green Deal. Mm-hmm. You talk about €1 trillion of euros. That's a huge money. We are not suffering from lack of money. Money is sufficient, and if you have a great project, you will find a way to finance it. I will also add something about a positive signal coming from insurance companies. Sometimes they are refusing to finance, to insure some kind of projects which are not going to on the right way, and because they are able to count, they are able to say that the cost of the project is high, and no, they are thinking about the cost of non-action, so they are willing to finance and to insure good project, because the cost of non-action are higher than the cost of the project. So the insurance are a good way to evaluate if we are in the good way or not.
Okay, please, Džiugas.
Yeah, and also small comment on this role of landscape architect. I think, from my experience at municipality, that there are like many specialists that are very good at solving very particular problems, and there are like software and like each and every like discipline has been like more and more efficient, so to say, to solve this problem. But that usually means on the cost of other disciplines. So I think for landscape architects, really like the challenge is to be the generalist, So in one way, that you need to know your of course speciality, but you need to be like a generalist to combine all these different aspects and into one like functioning entity, so to say. So.
Yeah, and continuing on this collaboration and collaborating with businesses, there's a popular question here on Slido. What are the ways businesses could work with the municipality to make cities greener? So maybe from your perspective, from your experience, like what helps to convince business? You mentioned that taxonomy, that's coming, and other money comes back in different forms. But really, what helps? Maybe share each of you some tips. How to collaborate better with.
From my experience, it's like, of course, every developer wants to develop like housing next to the park, but no developer wants to build a park. And I was surprised by Ivan's presentation, like when you mentioned these numbers, like how much does it generate? So I'm very like I would like to know how you calculate this, like how you because I understand that it is a very powerful method of presentation, so to say. So.
That work was done by a company called Vivid Economics, who are environmental economists, and run by a guy called Robin Smale, who is a very, very good economist. And they basically, parks are for also health and tourism. And they were the only two things they calculated, not water, not biodiversity, not climate change. And he explained the numbers, and he was like, we took out everything that we couldn't guarantee and only included what we could. And that number, £91 billion, is like, that's a lot of money. And having worked with the guys, I mean, they're true. It sounds false, but it's true. And so by excluding things that they weren't sure about, they guaranteed that the number was correct. And I think a lot of people try and put too much in and talk about everything and therefore get the number wrong. So I was asked at the break how we do some of the valuation work, and it's like, well, it's really hard because finding the one thing that you can actually value, so maybe it's that flower arrangement there, how do you take away the water bottles or the lights or the building? And a lot of the poor quality valuations aren't able to do that. And so again, if you're talking to a municipality who want a figure they can stand up in front of the public with, and it's not robust, then it falls down a little bit. So it's really tricky. But yeah, if you want, I can share that report. It's interesting to see how they did it.
Yeah, definitely.
I can give the example of the Bristol city, for example, applying to be a green capital. It came not from the city administration, from the mayor. It came from the private sector, who wanted to apply to achieve the better transition, to foster, to have a territorial dynamic, positive dynamic. And if Kaunas is going to apply, it's not only the decision of the mayor. It should be also a decision of private sector companies who are driving some policy about waste, about water, about mobility. So both are connected and have their own expectations, because it's profitable to change.
And applying for that award, what's the biggest challenge, maybe more challenges, applying for the award and preparing to get this award? Because Kaunas has ambition, as I understand, to get this award or to move that direction. But what it really means, so not to stop in the middle, not to fail.
It needs a really strong political support, but also a strong citizens' involvement. What I said, and really on a long-term period, not only 1 year or 2 years, the most profitable application was made probably by Oslo, who applied for a period of time of 10 years. Because being labelized is not a problem, it is a journey you are driving. It's the change you are driving with citizens, with your administration, and within the city to transform the city. The journey is the best way. So you have to take time. You have to take your time to get there.
And I have a question from the public that's very connected. Urban sprawl elimination through mixed and more dense development. Has there been any backlash from public? Does this mean no individual private homes are built? Probably Malmö and others. Yeah, I would like to hear. That's
Actually, there's like very little individual houses built in Malmö at the moment, really. But yes, of course, there is like you have to understand when you speak about like in comprehensive plan level, and you say like, okay, we'll build dense, green, sustainable cities, and everybody like, yay. And then when you say like, okay, but that means that your neighbor will be closer to like building to your like no, we don't need this. So to say. So it's like this effect of not in my backyard. So yeah, you have when you speak about big plans and big strategies, so to say, like in comprehensive planning level, for instance. So you need to explain for ordinary people as well. What does it mean? What we gain and what we lose, so to say. You cannot put only the bright side, and when it comes to implementation, it fails, so to say. So yeah, of course, it is a very like methodical and long work to speak to the public and to decide together like are we doing this or not? Is it worth or not, so to say? So do we have any other like option? So.
Bernard, maybe do you have this social aspect in your green pass evaluation, some sort of involvement? Does it?
What we have is in the qualitative sector some social indicators like are there spaces for people to communicate, are there urban gardens, is it barrier free, and so on and so forth. So this is single points qualitative indicators. It's just a minor part of our certification. What I wanted to add is that single houses, the people that I talk to from the sustainable side, architects, building physics, they say that's not the future, it's the past. We cannot afford it anymore. And of course, everybody in Austria is a single house building society, horrible. And it will not work. We will not succeed in climate change, mitigation, adaptation, anything like that if we follow that path. And we changed the way we live over the centuries. We started in caves. Now we are in high-rise buildings. So there is progress in a way.
And does it help the seeing data for like common people to understand that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So we use these visualizations and stuff like this, or not we use, our clients and our partners use it to communicate. So basically, to understand what we calculate, you don't need to be an IT expert. Just to need to understand numbers between 0 and 100. That's something that you learn in ground school. And you need to understand colors and plans a little bit. So that's very easy to understand also for our partners. No IT experts needed. So it's very much used for communication. And we do have things like how much water does the biotop city store when the rain event comes, and we calculate bath tubes. Or the maintenance that you said, the maintenance cost is so many Netflix subscriptions a year. So we translate into things that people are familiar with so that they would understand that that's not the biggest thing. Or for the IKEA, we calculated it's something like 20 VW ID4 cars, electric cars. That's the investment for the green. They say, only 20 cars, really? Okay, it's not much. So this is something that we do.
And I think I forgot to mention, like when you speak about like density and all this, it can sound very like I don't know, the horror example for ordinary people when they see like you know, Hong Kong development in front of their house, or like Perkunkiemis in Vilnius. Like, no, that's not the way we're going. Like dense doesn't mean to be like low quality. It can offer much higher life quality than low density actually. And I think it is important now coming back to this like design and aesthetics, but also like how you like feel the city, how you live in the city, so to say. So I think it is very important to raise these good examples and show like. And then it's much easier to speak with people. Okay, you won't be living in like a detached house, but maybe row house is even better. It's like you don't have to spend the whole weekend on molding the lawn, you know, and you can still have the same qualities. You can grill your barbecue in the garden, and you have school and shop and healthcare next corner, so to say. So it's like.
I would like to add something to density, because you ask about where does the money come from. And I'm a fan of the gross floor bonus. So with the Biotop City that I showed before, there was a contract between the developers and the municipality. So the municipality buys all the property in first hand before they sell it further on to developers, and then they make the rules. That's a clever thing Vienna does. So in that moment, they say, okay, you're allowed to build something like 180,000 square meters of gross floor area. And the developers committed themselves to the Biotop City criteria, which is a concept of the dense city as nature from Helga Fassbinder, a professor from the Netherlands. And they committed themselves to do that. And then they negotiated with the city, and the city saw that they would bring more quality with higher density than without. So they were allowed to build 140,000 square meters. So an additional 22,000 square meters gross floor area for the developers, more space for the people, better performance for nature and for the climate. And this is a win-win situation. I think that this approach is quite nice.
And Ian, maybe you can add up from your perspective the involvement of communities and their role in monitoring and also co-creating green infrastructure. How is it in England, and from your experience?
I think it's a really difficult thing to do effectively, because there's a whole issue around trust. So are municipalities delivering on what they say they're going to do? So back to the greenwash question, how do you make sure you get good places? And there are lots of examples in Manchester, in Liverpool, of communities feeling that they're not listened to. So even if there is a consultative process, even if there is an opportunity for co-production, they don't necessarily want to engage because they might be ignored. And one example is in 2015, Liverpool did a city-wide green space review. And it went out and it took politicians out to communities to be shouted at by the public. It was fantastic. And there was one lady from North Liverpool whose park was earmarked for development. And she, single parent, small house, no garden. And she said to somebody, I'm going to use a very English phrase now, would you like to step outside for a minute? Which basically means fighting. And she was so adamant that they were not going to build on her park, but she didn't trust them not to sell it. So she was prepared to commit violence to do this. Where it's done well, I think it's amazing, because you start to see people taking ownership of, again, that flower arrangement, the trees outside their house, the local garden, the local allotment. But I think it's down to a lot of time and effort from officers, which in the UK in particular, they don't really have. They don't necessarily have the capacity, the time, or the money to do it. So co-creation is one of those things that we say we do, but we don't do it that well. And I look to Copenhagen, to Malmo, and go, okay, this is how you do it, because you put in the time and the effort and the money, and you create that trust. But there are so many examples in the UK where people say they're going to do something, take all the information, and then leave. Then they come back 5 years later, do the same thing, and the community just go, no, we're not doing this. So it's the UK is a bad example for most things, and I look to Europe and go, Europe's really cool, it does good stuff, and we should do it like this. But yeah, the UK is terrible.
And Yves, you showed in your examples those already classics with the cars and those little allotment gardens that you delegate for people. So now, what's your practice with involvement of community members and delegating maybe the care of public spaces? What's the trend in Strasbourg?
I'm afraid to say that we are not going the right way.
Yeah.
You ask for failure and successes. Due probably to an extreme attention on climate urgency. The new team elected in 2020 has declared climate urgency in the first council. And since then, I have to say some decisions are made without any debates with the citizens. And this is, for me, it's a pity. It's not the right way to go forward. We are trying to, in some kind of project, to re-impulse citizens' consultation, citizens' dialogue. It's very, very hard because due to the situation, the new situation of cost of energy, increasing cost of energy, are even more stressing politicians. So it's not so easy. But I wanted to shed light on another concept in the dialogue between density and individual homes. You have another. When you think about at the level of the citizens, you have a concept called the 15-minute city, developed by Carlos Moreno in Paris, but also was part of the final declaration of the World Urban Forum in Katowice last June. 5-minute city means being able for citizens to have in his neighborhood all the facilities. It means access for mobility, access to school, to gardens, to green infrastructure, to jobs, to services, financial services, to eating services. So when you think, this is due probably also to the COVID crisis, because people have to stay home. So they had only a few, we were able to go outside 1 hour per day, 1 kilometer, okay? So in that field, what do you have as access to? This is very important. So I think we can skip from this debate from density or not to the debate accessibility or not.
And talking about this urge that we don't have time, we have to act now, and what compromises should we do as human beings? Because what we saw here, and we're still very human-centered. And we think we build this, of course, environment for ourselves, that it's convenient, very 15-minute, you have everything. But even here in Lithuania, we had this new approaches that probably some colleagues will share after lunch about not cutting grass and having this in the cities and having this really biodiverse environment and insects coming back, but it's not comfortable for human beings. So should we start doing compromises as this, or being inconvenient and living with those insects that might bring illnesses and whatever, but or we should try looking for solutions that we still live comfortably and we see green from window, very nice, controlled. And maybe I want to start with you, because you really work with this and every day, and this being together with nature, good practices. And
well, I believe that we should be afraid of nature. So insects can come, and you take a vaccination if you are afraid of sticks or something like that. So that's my opinion, but I understand that somebody else might be worried. So what is happening. But I think it's really change of our minds that we have to think also those insects, not only humans.
Part of this green infrastructure, and the human is just one part.
We are just only one animal there. Yeah.
Yes, I was told that we have to close because we were lagging behind. But there are so many questions. There are some to Džiugas because he's a popular, sorry, like a guy from Kaunas. But everybody asks for tips for Kaunas and your first impressions and your wishes for Kaunas. So maybe instead of closing remarks, maybe you could really share what your first impressions about Kaunas is, and what would you wish for Kaunas for the future, going that path, creating this green infrastructure, and what mistakes to avoid, and maybe what's the potential to be used. Maybe you can start and let's make a round.
Well, I walked around Kaunas yesterday. So you have this really nice pedestrian street there, really long one, and nice rivers. So we were looking at the river banks. Like the other bank is really strongly made, and the other one is like really natural one. So maybe on those natural river banks there might be something that you could develop.
I've not really had a chance to go outside yet, so that's this afternoon. I would say be bold, shout a lot, point fingers at politicians, make them promise things, make them guarantee money. Because if the money's there, then at least something can happen. And I think those cities where I've been, where there's been really strong local advocacy, holding politicians to account, things happen. And those cities are nice places. And if you do that here, then somebody starts to listen, then somebody else starts to listen, then the minister, who I think is gone now, starts to listen, then the minister puts his hand in his pocket and gives you some cash, and then the city becomes nicer. It's a long-term process, but shout at people.
Thanks. I had the feeling that Kaunas is a very active and growing and really forward-looking city. I've never been here before, and a lot of things are going on, like with the pedestrian area and so on. So I think the path is right, but you need to avoid things, and I want to underline what Ian said: be bold, and also bring the regulations in place. Make sure that there is a financial consequence to developers if they do not stick to that. So, for instance, yes, we have green roof regulatories in Vienna, but in the end you have some broken brick on the roof and no green. So make sure that the quality is controlled, make sure that there is regulations that demand for certain qualities, and don't build heat islands anymore. Stop that.
Great.
I think that my presentation was full of tips for Kaunas, and I'm very glad to answer questions like after like break and so on. But I would like to stress one maybe thing like that I pointed in my presentation as well, like taking into consideration the things that you already have and the things that are that you cannot create yourself. For instance, rivers in Kaunas. When I first get to know that the conference will be in this location, I thought like it's the best venue for a landscape conference in Kaunas. Like yes, and when I came to venue today, like where's the river? So like you take the best like of Kaunas, and then you hide it behind the curtain, you know.
Yes, I came also only this morning, so I cannot say so much things about Kaunas. Out of this straight highway going through the city, so dedicated to cars, trucks, and also there is something to do with this. Probably, I don't know. Another, just little tips about what you asked before on grass. You can let your grass grow but just cut 1 meter on the side, and people are satisfied. Yes, administration take care about this place, and also the bees and everything. Biodiversity is going to grow also.
Thank you very much, and have a good lunch break. Enjoy Kaunas, and please do not hesitate. Approach the speakers and ask your questions privately on smaller groups. See you after lunch.